here today to discuss an issue that I think is really significant for a lot of Floridians, and that's the burden of property taxes and the need for property tax relief. This is something I've been talking about for many, many months now after listening to folks and trying to figure out what can we do to make Florida even better. We are currently one of the best states for, if not the best, for state-level taxation. We have no income tax, and a decent chunk of the revenue that the state generates is not paid by Florida residents. It's paid by snowbirds and visitors and tourists. And isn't that the way you want taxation to go? Offload as much of the burden to non-residents as possible so that we can relieve the burden on our residents. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's the philosophy that we need to continue to do. So we've had that, but you also have at the local level property taxes. And while we do have things like homestead exemption, which helps softens the blow, the reality is we're not even in the top 20 when it comes to property taxes, and we need to change that. We need to make sure that we're giving taxpayers relief when it comes to property taxes. And we have a philosophical, issue. If you come and you're a tourist from Canada and you visit Florida, you can choose to buy what you want and purchase what, it's voluntary, right? So when you're paying the tax, there's a voluntary element to it. Most of the essentials that people need, like food and water, are not taxed under Florida sales tax anyways. So you can decide to go on that vacation to Florida knowing that you'll have to pay different taxes for your purchases. When it comes to owning your home, though, for some reason, they don't give you a choice in that. You own your property, you own your house, and yet you got to perpetually pay, pay taxes, which is effectively rent to the government, just to be able to live on your property. If you stop paying the property tax, they could take your property. And so that's wrong. And philosophically, it's not the way you would want to raise revenue. You would much prefer to do it on consumption, particularly when we have 142 million visitors who come to Florida and are able to contribute to the coffers. And so that's really what it means to be a low tax state. Now, we have seen in recent years a dramatic increase in property values. Now, there's some benefit to that. If that's your main source of wealth that you own, that's going to go up. You're going to be wealthier as a result of that. But on the flip side of that is your house gets assessed as more, even though you didn't sell it. It's just an unrealized gain, and you get higher valuations. And even with homestead, it still goes up in terms of what you pay. And especially when people have to move and then they buy a new house, then they're at a much higher cost basis, tax basis, and then that becomes very difficult. So the burden of property taxes is real. We have launched a DOGE effort from the state government that is looking at our agencies, because we do this as a matter of course, but we want to do better, looking at our universities, but also looking at local governments. And so we had a number of local governments who have volunteered to participate in that. Some of the ones that need it the most have been the least likely to want to participate in that. We tried to work with the legislature to get DOGE in law so that we could send teams down to these city and county governments, because I think what you've seen is, you go back to the last 4 or 5 years, you've seen big growths in these budgets that really outstrips population growth by a long shot. And so the question is do they need to be spending that much money? Do they need to be taking money from you in property taxes to fuel increase in budgets? And I think you should know, and you should, as taxpayers, have an ability to evaluate that appropriately. And so we are going to do we're going to continue to work to get the DOGE where it needs to be. I mean, we've already done, we met with Elon Musk a couple months ago, and we had rejected federal spending under Biden. They didn't know how to take it back, and so we worked with them, and they revoked the authorization. So that was contributing almost $1 billion to the DOGE efforts. We just announced some of the grants and alerted them, and they've taken back some federal grants from universities, such as West Florida, which was about social justice, and that's not an appropriate use of tax dollars. So we've been working really hard to do it. Having said that, most of these budgets, if you just went back to 2019, 2020 levels, you wouldn't miss a beat on a lot of this stuff. I mean, you really could get the job done. So we want to be able to show that, because some people say, oh, well, we want property tax relief. but, quote, it just can't be done. Yeah, it can be done, okay? Florida's proven we can get big things done, and so you can do it, and it's something that I think is really, really important.